I say we go be like, excuse me, you already have some.
Meg, are you in the meeting right now successfully? I got your email.
I am, Jeanette. I was panicking. I wanted to be here early.
Okay.
I'm now here. Thank you.
Sorry about that. Thanks.
No worries.
Okay. Let me just, before we reconvene, let me just make sure I know which of us folks in the working group are here. So Kelly, I think you're right. And then Susan, Wendy, and Meg, got you. Maria, Denise, you're here. Is Karen with us this afternoon? We've seen her rejoin. Not yet. And Christopher's not here. And Andy, unfortunately, had something come up and he's not going to be able to rejoin us this afternoon. But I believe he'll be watching the recorded testimony. But we have enough of us here to reconvene at this point. Because the videos will likely be posted in 2 chunks, I'll just quickly share with everyone that my name is Catherine Delnow. I'm the Vermont State Librarian and Commissioner of the Department of Libraries and the chair of the working group on the status of libraries in Vermont. We have taken a recess for a little bit more than 2 hours. We have come back to the second half of our meeting. Today's Friday, March 25th. This is the second half of the 4th meeting of the working group on the status of libraries in Vermont. And we are continuing with testimony on the topic of facilities. I just want to remind everybody that this meeting is being recorded and that we will post the recording on the Vermont Department of Libraries website and YouTube channel. And the topic that we are hearing about, just to restate our charge in the working group regarding facilities. The working group may study whether library facilities and buildings could be improved with regard to energy efficiency, accessibility, flexibility, human health and safety, historic preservation, and intergenerational needs. And our plan for the second half of our meeting is to hear from seven folks from libraries around the state who have signed up to provide testimony. They'll each give 15 minutes of, well, they'll first give testimony and then take questions up to 15 minutes total with the testimony and questions. And after that, we'll have a 15-minute session for the working group to, after that, we'll have public comment for anyone who is here to share public comment who wasn't put on the agenda. And that would be public comment on the topic of facilities. And then we will have a brief session continuing the conversation from earlier this morning on the topics of preparing for the next meetings and some of the work of the working group. Okay, with all that said, I want to welcome Lisa Samet. Did I say that correctly, Lisa? Oh, can you unmute? Let me unmute you. Hang on. There you go.
Am I unmuted now?
You are unmuted. We can hear you. So I want to welcome you, Lisa. Thank you so much for being here today and being ready to share your testimony about the topic of facilities in libraries. And if you could introduce yourself and your library, and then the floor is yours.
All righty. I'm Lisa Samet, and I'm the library director at the Judavine Memorial Library in Hardwick. I've been the librarian here for almost 22 years, and I'd been librarian in other places in other states. The minute I started my job here, I knew we were going to have to address ADA issues because the library is a very old historical building and you cannot get in here with a wheelchair, and the bathroom is in a basement that's unheated down a actual winding staircase. And so that is totally not ADA compliant. And if you just tried to put a bathroom in or a lift in, you would lose so much space that you're like not able to complete most of your mission as a library, because it would really take away too much space. So right from the get-go, I knew that I needed to probably put an addition on the library. However, the library had been historically underfunded and did not have librarians who were active librarians. So it took me quite a few years just to get our budget up and start a Friends of the Library group and do all kinds of things. And then as we started working on putting an addition on, money is a big problem. We're a small little town. We're not a wealthy town. We don't have millionaires running around. And, you know, there's some grants, but the grants are very small and costs keep rising. It's been quite a struggle to be able to put together enough money, plus to put together a team of people. I had trustees who were interested in doing it, but as the library director, if you don't have a good board who's really willing to work and do fundraising, which my boards historically, the library is now 126 years old. And before the board that I currently have, which kind of came together in 2018, my trustees never did fundraising themselves. I started a small Friends of the Library group, and they've done a lot of fundraising, but you know, you really need people who get out and schmooze with people and, you know, really ask people that might have some deep pockets to get you some money. But looking, you know, at the state of Vermont, we got a Vermont Arts Council grant toward our elevator, but you know, that's not a big chunk of money. When we had our plan designed, it came out to be about $1.69 million. And then we were lucky that a person who died left us almost $500,000, which really helped. My board did a lot of fundraising, a lot of grant writing. We've gotten grants from USDA Rural Development, grants from VCDP. But then when we went out to bid because of COVID, the project went from 1.69 million to 2.4 million. So that's a huge amount more for us to get. And so we started scrambling. We've been lucky that Senator Leahy's office, and we've kept in contact with the entire Vermont delegation all along the process. And when Senator Leahy asked people who wanted to get directed congressional spending, we applied, and we were one of 10 institutions that got money. We got $600,000 that will come through USDA Rural Development, added on to what we already got from them. So we think we have enough, but we're not quite sure because we have to go out to bid again. And, you know, having raised as much as we have and having no, you know, it's really hard to find those sources of money. And there's not much you can do with this building. It's only 900 square feet. It's totally inadequate. And we really literally, to do our job as librarians, we've actually hit physical walls because we're not able to do so much. If we have big programs, they have to be in other locations. We have to carry stuff around. We're just not accessible to most people. The children's room is shared with adults, so they don't have their own spaces. There's very little privacy in this building. And yet, to me, the state of Vermont, if it tried to help libraries in their facilities, libraries have become the center of communities and the big heart of communities where people of all ages, races, thoughts, beliefs come and are welcome. And I think it's a, incredible investment for the state to provide some money to help libraries. Some libraries, all they need is, a way to get into the library or a accessible bathroom, or they need a meeting room. For us, we're going to have a meeting room that will be available for everybody in the public, and it's going to be a highly efficient, energy efficient building, which the actual building we're in right now, we've done quite a bit of efficiency work on it, but it's hard to do on a building that's 126 years old, that's made of stone. It is an absolutely gorgeous building, though. It's on the National Register and well known because it was built by, or designed and built by Lambert Packard, the great architect from St. Johnsbury. So my testimony is that libraries in our state are really, really important cultural institutions, and it's hard for all of the libraries to get money to repair their old buildings, their small buildings. We're not a particularly rich state with tons of wealthy people running around, and yet libraries are very fundamental in our towns. And I think that the state of Vermont, because we're one of the very few states that does not do any direct funding to any of the libraries, they'd be well worth investing in library facilities and helping communities in that way. So I think that's all I want to say.
Thank you so much, Lisa, for taking the time to be here today, for preparing and sharing your testimony. With the remainder of the time allotted to you, we can move into questions from the working group members. So questions people have for Lisa. So working group members, if you could use the raise hand function, that will really help. And I see Wendy, thank you so much. Wendy Sharkey's gonna ask you a question.
Yeah, Lisa, could you tell me what sort of size of population you serve and what your annual budget is?
Our current population is 2,800 people. The population has declined since the last census. Our library budget is $128,000 this year. And that includes, everything, salaries and everything.
Yeah, thank you. That's kind of a difference when you're trying to raise 2.4 million.
It is. Yeah.
Thanks, Wendy, for your question. Are there questions from other members? I'm looking for my questions. Hold on for a second. Lost them. I'm wondering, Lisa, what would you like to see? Is there anything specific that you have thought of that you'd like to see at the state level to help you address some of the issues and concerns that you have with your library facility now?
Well, I think at the state level, it would be nice if there was some kind of grant program just for facilities. It didn't have to be historic. It didn't have to be Vermont Arts Council where you're doing accessibility grants, but just a building grant. And, it might be a matching grant, because I totally believe that it's good to have buy-in from your community, because I think a sense of ownership of your building is important. And I think it's one thing that we did with our project right now. So, if there were grants, say you had $100,000 grant and then it was a matching one, that'd be a nice bunch of money for a lot of libraries. So I'm not sure what else I have in mind. I just wish manna came from heaven.
And then I'm wondering if there are library services, when we think about the facilities as the place where the collections are housed and the services are provided, are there services that your town needs or that you'd like to provide that you're not able to? And maybe you could speak to the facility from that perspective. You've talked about how it's a very small footprint, but what are some of the things that you would say that would help you to provide today's library service in your town?
Well, there's a comfort level that we can't provide. So when people come in with their own devices whatsoever, we have very few chairs for people to sit in. There, as I said, it's crowded. So there's the area where the picture books are, and one table for people to sit with their computers. And then we have a computer area. We have no room for extra computers. And I would love to do things like lend out non-traditional items, but we have no place to store them. We don't have a meeting room, as I said. So whenever we have a program in the library has to be closed, and I can only fit in about 12 adults. And when you have a kids program, you have to move all the furniture around. So it all becomes quite, like it takes you an hour just to set up the building in order to have a program. And we have, no space for anyone else in the community. In the building, in our addition that we're putting on, we're going to have a very nice meeting room that will fit 80 people, plus has a kitchen, and we have a small conference room. So that will be available to all nonprofits for free. Hopefully they'll give to us donations, and to commercial groups, they would be able to use it by paying a fee to use it. Something like that doesn't really exist in Hardwick, so it'll be a really nice thing to offer the community. Now I just feel like we have this one wall of books for teens. There's no place in town for teens to hang out, and we'll have a teen area. So we're right down from the high school and right up from the elementary school. And I'm hoping that kids will find this place a place to hang out in, which right now, I mean, sometimes, especially before the pandemic, we would just have every seat in the library filled and people sitting on the floor. And you can't increase membership, and you can't increase usage if you literally have walls stopping you, which is really what we have, 900 square feet. That we have a high ceiling, though. We have 15-foot ceilings. Yeah. So, yeah. I mean, there's so many more things we can do once we have a better facility.
Thank you for sharing that. Are there other questions for Lisa? Well, Lisa, thank you so much for being with us today and for taking the time to prepare testimony, to share it with us. It's really helpful to us to kind of take the pulse of libraries around the state, and we appreciate your time and what you shared very much. And if you think of something later that you didn't capture already in the written testimony you submitted, please feel free to submit additional written testimony. And we would attach that to what you've shared already. And you're welcome to stay and listen to other folks who are going to meet with us this afternoon, if you're able, but no pressure on that.
Back to the back to the checkout desk right now is where I'm going. Thank you all very much for doing this work too. I'm really happy to know what the working group is doing on many levels. So thanks for all of your work. Have a great day. Bye.
Thanks so much. Okay, our next individual is going to be Scott Miller, who's here from the UVM Howe Library. Hi, Scott.
Hello.
Thank you so much for being here today with us. You have 15 minutes to share your testimony and also to take questions from members of the working group. So
Certainly.
hand it over to you now.
I was asked to provide some testimony from some of our staff here, Denise Hershey and Megan Allison. And we do share a lot of your same issues, but just on a larger scale. Funding is always difficult for our needs. Storage space is stretched to the limit. You know, we're outsourcing some of our storage to warehouses, which aren't ideal. And then always having the proper environmental controls for all different kinds of media is very crucial. Right now, we only have humidification in our rare areas, and we could use it everywhere else. Not sure if my cohorts want to chime in on this, but if you read any of our testimony that we submitted, I'm happy to take any questions on that.
Scott, it sounds like you've got other folks from UVM here with you.
Yes, they're on your working group.
Oh, okay. Very good. Did any of you want to add to what Scott has shared?
Hi, this is Denise. I guess part of what I can say is that, and Scott can correct me if I'm wrong, but Scott basically works for our facilities for all of the library buildings on campus and the remote buildings. So we have one full-time person doing the job that probably could be done by at least 3, and doing it really well. But obviously, you know, we're a public institution and our funding is pretty limited. So we make do with what we can. And you could read the testimony. There's some information about the HVAC. You can see also that there is that leak in the basement that seems to be unavoidable and something we can't really do much about. It's not even really a basement. I mean, it is a space that is usable space.
No, there's a variety of concerns around water intrusion, just you name it. And having the battle for the funds is never easy because physical plant is in such dire straits with deferred maintenance that we get what we can for life safety and ADA, but everything else is a battle. Like we're looking at a cold freezer for some of our photos because they're starting to degrade to the point where we might not be able to recover them. So it's just things like that the state gives us a very limited funds, but not directly to us. So increasing funds for us, I know it's hard to ask that when you have, you know, smaller libraries that have a fraction of our services, but a piece would be helpful actually.
I mean, we're the flagship institution for the state and we can't be proactive, and not just in facilities. We're pretty much reactive, and everywhere else budgets are getting tighter. And as Scott alluded, we have to ask for our budget from the provost's office. So we're just one of many individuals or many centers on campus who are all vying for the same pot of gold.
Yes,
And I'll echo a little bit of what Scott said as well. Oh, Sorry, Catherine.
I was going to ask a follow-up question, but I'll hold it, Marian.
Are you sure? Okay. Just to echo a little bit of what Scott was saying, that yeah, we are the flagship university of the state, but you know, so many of the issues that have been brought today and in other meetings, they affect us too, obviously at a different scale or at different levels, but we feel those impacts as well. I know working in my department and in others, that space is just such a huge issue for so many. And we're all always grappling for space that either is there or, you know, have dreams of bigger spaces that can't be for either because of either funding or the actual space itself, asbestos, or, you know, the way the building has been, the infrastructure of the building and that kind of thing. So, yeah. And I just wanted to thank Scott for being here today.
Yeah, absolutely. Scott, can you share with us what your role is? Just, I want to be sure that we acknowledge sort of the expertise that you bring, and it would be helpful, I think, to have that as part of the testimony.
So I'm the facility manager for the university library system, which is basically 230,000 square feet, 3 main libraries with a research annex on campus that houses half of our collection plus special collections, and then 2 remote storages.
That's a giant scope of work.
I'm not going to disagree.
Well, thank you for taking time to be here with us. I'm sure that any minute away from maintaining and running those facilities is hard to get. I'm wondering, I noticed in the testimony that you submitted that you were saying a statewide preservation team would be helpful and useful for everyone during emergencies. And I wonder if you can share, the 3 of you can share sort of what you would envision a team like that would provide and what their backgrounds might be and their expertise, so that we can hear more about that idea.
We did do some work with, I forget the name of the person that works for the state. We had some classes with them, with our special collections archivist. And just having that knowledge base as a larger group. I take it back to the Pringle Herbarium fire we had here in Torrey, where we had our D plan set up and we had disaster kits on hand for an event, for like a 500 water book event. And we were able to use those disaster kits to supply the collection that was water damaged in the Pringle Herbarium. And we were able to help them save those and get those things frozen in time so we can have them reconstituted later at I think it was in Boston. So having more knowledge about how to handle a variety of water, fire, smoke, you name it, power outages, just disastrous events at a statewide level. So, you know, you guys can tap into us and we can tap into you when these events happen. And just training throughout for a variety of scenarios.
Thanks for sharing more about that. Kelly, I see your hand is up.
Yeah, I have 2 questions, and I apologize if you already mentioned this and I missed it. What is your annual budget for facilities maintenance?
That is a moving target. There's no direct budget for facilities. Physical plant tends to work on infrastructure issues, and then our budget to help them out is minuscule. We try to tend to do you know, in-house projects, office space moves, relocations, you know, storage space upgrades, but there's no set budget. It differs from year to year for that.
Okay, and the second question is, I think you said you deal with the provost as far as like budgeting and stuff like that. What is their response when you tell them that, like, you guys are the state repository for all things? I mean, we don't hold things, well, we don't, like, as a public library, we don't hold things because we're like, oh, UVM has it. You know, we don't have to keep it on our shelves. We don't have the space. So, but if you guys aren't able to maintain an environment where those things are kept safe, then, you know, what is their answer for that?
For the most part, the collections that need the humidification have it. There are certain areas we're working on, and they do lend some of their money our way for these things, but it's always an arduous battle to get them to release the funds, because we're one part of the university, and there's all kinds of other divisions that are in dire need as well. So it's they know what's going on, but having the funds to put toward it is always difficult.
Thank you. Thank you for coming today.
Yeah.
Thanks for your question, Kelly, and questions rather. And then do we have other folks who are wanting to ask questions of our colleagues? Vivian? Okay. Well, I just really appreciate the time you've taken to share, to be with us here today. If you think of additional information that you'd like us to have in the working group, please do feel free to submit additional materials to provide additional written testimony and
Certainly.
share my appreciation for the work you're doing. Thank you.
Thanks, Scott.
All right. Take care, all.
Thanks, Scott.
The next individual we'll be hearing from, I want to do a time check. Oh, it's exactly 2:30. We are exactly on time now. Lynn, which is just luck. Linda from the Weston Library, is Linda here?
I think Linda may not be here. At least I haven't saw her yet. We could.
I noticed that Barbara may be here from Windsor.
I'm happy to go now. That would be fine. Thanks.
That's great. And then if Linda comes while you're presenting, then we'll just flip those two spots.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Barbara. If you could introduce yourself and your institution, and then you'll have 15 minutes for your testimony and for some questions.
Okay. Hi, I'm Barbara Ball. I'm the director of the Windsor Public Library. Windsor is a town of about 3,500 people. We're in South Central Vermont on the Connecticut River. We are an incorporated library. Our budget is about $116,000 a year. So our building is built in 1904, a 3,000 square foot in the main building, which is this beautiful historic building. In 2000, we were able to put a ramp up to the main floor. So our first floor is accessible. However, in the basement, you have to go down a full flight of stairs, is the children's room, is the one bathroom, is the meeting room, and the historical records room. So for the last 20 years, we've been trying to figure out how to make this building more accessible. We had a young woman who lived in Windsor, and when she was a really little kid, her parents would actually carry her down the stairs to the children's room, to choose her own books and to play. Then she got bigger, and it was the children's librarian having to bring books up to her, and she was never able to attend our popular Wednesday after school program because she could not get down there. So for the last 20 years, we've been trying to become accessible. In 2010, it was this incredible plan, a $1.5 million plan to do an expansion onto the library's building. And this was never financially doable for Windsor. So actually in the last 2 years, we've started fundraising for a much more modest goal, just to try to increase our accessibility of installing a lift into our building footprint. So we take out a big hunk out of the staff office, a hunk out of the historic records room, so that there would be a lift downstairs. We will improve our bathroom for accessibility. It's not an ideal plan, but finally, most people who are unable to do stairs will be able to get down into our basement, into our children's room, to use our only bathroom. We have a volunteer right now. Our front desk is staffed with volunteers, and one of our favorite volunteers who loves being here is not able to volunteer right now. She's older. She now has a bum knee and she can't do a 2-hour shift without using the bathroom. And right now our bathroom isn't accessible. So those are the big points. And also as far as energy efficiency, we actually had Energy Efficient Vermont come out and do and take a look. Basically the only thing, I mean, we're not insulated. The only thing that they said that could happen is actually our staff office has a flat roof that we could actually, if we had the money, we would be able to install solar panels on top of the flat roof because it's hidden behind, the beautiful, front of the building. That might be an option to hugely impact our, the amount of oil we use, the amount of money we spend, the amount of, energy that's wasted. And I think that's about it.
Thank you so much, Barbara, for being here today. Now I'm going to open it up to the members of the working group for questions. Wendy.
Yes, it sounds great that you're going to be finally able to reach your lower levels, but you'll be losing space from other collections. So how will you handle that? So that's got to come as a bit of a shock.
I mean, it will be making some decisions, and it will be having to make some decisions and rearrange and lose some elbow room. It's not ideal, but and our historical records room was recently renovated, so unfortunately it's going to be smaller, but at least so many more people will be able to access it.
So is there anything that would have helped the process along other than money, because that's a recurring theme throughout the whole day? But
yeah, I guess just money. Although I guess earlier in this meeting, they were talking about having somebody at the state level who could actually provide like sort of information, and I mean, as well as a state fund for construction projects. But if there was somebody at the state level that could be asked questions about accessibility, could be asked questions about, should I worry that the slate came off my roof? Is this a big deal or is this a small deal? That would be really helpful, probably.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have questions from other members of the working group? Susan.
Hi, Barbara. You mentioned that your library is 3,000 square feet at this point. Is that correct? So once your renovation has been completed, will you have any more square footage at all, or will you actually have less square footage?
Our main floor is 3,000 square feet, so our basement adds an additional, so will be the same amount of square feet, just a little more compacted.
And that amount of space for what you're doing right now, is that adequate? Is it inadequate? Is it just all that you could possibly need? Where does
it would be
land?
wonderful. It would be wonderful if the children's room wasn't in the basement. I mean, basements are basements.
Mm-hmm.
It would be wonderful if the bathroom wasn't in the basement, because some people, even with a lift or an elevator, it still takes a little bit longer to wait to get to the bathroom if you have to wait for an elevator.
Right. Yeah, makes sense. And in terms of housing your main collections, do you feel like you have the size that you need?
It does okay. We have some historical, we have some really old newspapers that it would be really nice if they were in a more controlled environment.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Further questions from the working group? I'm trying to think, Barbara. Oh, I see Meg has some. I'll organize my question while Meg asks hers.
Oh, can you hear me? Okay, great. I realize when I have, and I don't know why my camera isn't coming on. Question. Thank you for joining us today, Barbara. I love the packed shelving behind you. I got my start in a small library in Waitsfield, and that reminds me of my office there, very much so. You can find. I know you know where everything is. One of our other librarians who spoke this morning spoke about American Rescue Plan monies that they had used. Have you looked into those for the Windsor Library?
We have, some of our board members have been talking with the town. I don't think any decisions have been made yet. We were hopeful.
Great, excellent. I know that I hadn't considered that money being used or had heard of it being used for public libraries, and just wanted to suggest that because it sounds like a good funding source for sure.
That would be wonderful, definitely.
Yeah, and just in the interest of sharing, Barbara, there, in addition to the town American, well, the ARPA funds, in addition to the town funds, there may also be some state ARPA funds next fiscal year available, fingers crossed, and the legislature willing, and potentially we may also have some grant opportunities through congressionally directed spending at this with the state administering grants. So we want to keep in touch as time goes on to be sure you're aware of all the opportunities.
Definitely.
We're hoping will be there for us.
Thank you.
Were there any other final questions for Barbara? Okay, in that case, thank you so much for being here today. You're welcome to stay on with us. I imagine you're also very busy, and so no pressure to do so. We really appreciate your testimony, and it's nice to meet you. Thank you for being with us today. Oh,
nice to meet you.
And if you think of anything additional that you think we would be interested in on this topic or the other topics that we've discussed at the 2 prior meetings, January and November, please feel free to submit additional written testimony.
I will. Thank you so much. And thank you all for your work on this. This is great. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, our next person, let's see, they may not be here yet. Bridget Carbonetti. If she's not here, she's not scheduled really until 3 o'clock.
We might be able, oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry, I saw that Peter Money had popped in. Is that true? Is Peter
I believe so.
Yes, I'm here.
Peter, would you like to take your 15 minutes now?
That would be fine with me.
Wonderful. Well, then we can do that without inconveniencing Bridget when Bridget arrives at 3.
Okay.
So please feel free to turn your camera on. We will turn ours off, and you'll have 15 minutes for your testimony and then answering questions.
Great. So thanks for holding this session. Rather than read my testimony, unless you'd really like that, I think I'd like to describe generally the situation at the Mary L. Blood Memorial Library in West Windsor. And if that will suffice, I'll just go ahead. Is that okay to speak generally?
Absolutely. You can use this time to speak any way you wish on this topic.
Okay. So the Mary L. Blood Memorial Library is in a town of roughly 1,000 people. We've grown over the last few years to a town of about 1,300 people. I think that received headlines in some of the Vermont newspapers as being a particularly large growth for a municipality. And we've experienced that here in the library. There have been many more requests during the pandemic. The there are many more concerns that we should provide more than we have in the past. There are continuing concerns that we should be open many more hours, provide a lot of technical assistance, audio, ebook. Our collection is not yet online. We have spreadsheets. So in a sense, we have a catalog, and that's relatively new for us. But we're very old school. I don't know if you can see behind me, but we're still very much an old shelf, one-room schoolhouse type of an environment. The building has not changed really in 122 years. During the pandemic, last year, we installed HVAC, air conditioning. We took away some shelving, some metal shelves that we had behind me to create an open meeting area. And we have about 6 groups who meet in the library now in this area behind me. We have a very small children's room, and we're thinking about how we could expand. Again, we have more people in town who want, for lack of a better phrase, I'll say city library resources. We're not a city, but people do want that kind of connectivity. People are working from home, as we know. So we're trying quickly to get up to speed. We're involved with GMLC. We hope to be, our intention is to be part of COHA. We are part of COHA, but we're taking baby steps to get there. So we're doing a lot of things at once. In terms of infrastructure, we do have a beautiful attic space above me, but it would require an elevator. We only have one entrance in and out. So I've been very mindful of high-risk community members who may not feel comfortable staying for long periods of time in this environment without a second egress. We have a basement that's a little shallow, but it could be used for storage. And then I'll just swivel around here for a moment to show you my space, which looks a little bit like Barbara's space. And it's our circ desk area. It's a little crowded. And we could actually, we're on about a half acre, a little less than a half acre right in town. And this property was given to the town. In a sense, we share it. We would like to expand into a backyard, which is taken care of by the parsonage next door. It would be a great opportunity to hold events out back for youth activities. They wouldn't have to cross a busy road. And we could expand our footprint a little bit to the south of us, facing Mount Ascutney. We're right at the base of Mount Ascutney, the northern base of Mount Ascutney. So we're trying to collaborate a lot with partners in town, the elementary school, Ascutney Outdoors. But there are a lot of things that need to happen for us to connect with these other groups and to make our individual departments, as it were, function a little bit more efficiently with each other. But we're getting there. I think I've probably painted a decent picture of where we are and what we're trying to do. Would it be okay to take questions, or would you like to hear more?
It's absolutely okay for us to do questions now. Before we do that, Peter, I want to thank you for being the first person to welcome me as state librarian. I have a letter from you that I've been meaning to respond to right next to me on my desk. And I will tell you now, I would love to visit your library. The little tour you just gave us was a teaser for that, but thank you for inviting me to visit. And I'm sorry, I've been so remiss. As soon as I saw your name in your library, I was like, oh no. So
it's fine and welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. And I also will be interested, side topic, I'll be interested in learning about these swimming holes. So I might visit when it's a tiny bit warmer. so that I can use that local knowledge. It looks like we've got a question ready from Kelly. So Kelly.
Hi, thank you so much for coming today. I was wondering, do any of the longtime residents have objection to the modernization of the library?
Well, that's a really interesting and wonderful question, because that is my instinct, actually. I'm kind of old school. I love this place because it does, you feel history here. And that's one of the great things about Vermont libraries, is that many of our libraries are small. They retain, or even the larger ones, they retain a sense of history. Well, they retain a sense of past, presence, and we hope to imbue that with a sense of the future. For instance, above me, I have a Civil War drum and taxidermied bear. And I'd say people really like this space because of its sense of history. And a lot of people don't want it to change too much. And yet, there's probably as many people who want the technology. Well, they want the newest fiction. They want audiobooks. They want ebooks. They want to be able to download movies. They want Wi-Fi. So we're trying to create that balance on a relatively small budget. And we're trying to encourage the town to buy in. The town is really only a recent owner of the library. It's just been about 3 years, even though I won't go into it, but over the long history, of course, the town and the library have been essentially one. But in terms of a deed, it's just been officially 3 years to my knowledge. So I don't know if that answers your question enough, but there is some division. You know, we've received some new furniture for both youth readers and adult readers, and that discussion has been interesting to watch. You know, one person could love a thing and the next could not like it at all. This table I'm at, for instance, someone would like to see it go, someone would like to see it stay.
Thank you. I think you'll find a way to be able to marry both ideas successfully.
Thanks.
Other questions for Peter? Susan.
Hey, Peter. I have two questions, actually. The first one is about your town. Is West Windsor a separate municipality from Windsor? Do you have two separate service areas?
Yes, it's separate, and not to bring up too much bad history, but there's even a cannon that used to be pointed in the direction of our neighbor. I think they've
coincidental, right?
Yeah, yes, they've neutralized that. But we were once. I think we had two separations, but we are now, have been for a long time, a separate municipality. And Brownsville, where the library is the village within West Windsor.
I see. Okay. And my second question has to do with your testimony really talks about the need for expansion of the space that you have. And it seems like we're hearing a lot about expansion and the need for expansion in libraries. But the other piece that's coming up again and again is the issue of maintenance, and both the cost of maintenance, but also just the knowledge of what the maintenance could be. So I was wondering if you could speak a bit about where your library stands in terms of maintenance.
Well, you know, we are a town with 3 select board members, largely volunteer. I think they receive $1,000 stipend, and so wheels, not because of that, but governance is really on a personal level. I think at town meeting, as with most towns, we hope for consensus. All that to say, getting things like one custodian for every town department is still that's a new concept. Just this year, I've hired cleaners for the library. There's another cleaner who takes care of town hall. I think the volunteer firefighters take care of the fire department. The historical society has hired a cleaner. So we're just starting to try to be less of a one-room schoolhouse and more of a multi-level school, as it were. The maintenance in this building in particular, much of it came through grant funding, the HVAC, the air conditioning. We do need storage, so if we pushed out of a wall or up or down, we'd be looking for funding. And in terms of maintaining that new space, it's kind of an ongoing question. Our library trustees will be meeting with the select board for a kind of long-range planning session in the next few months. So we really don't know what the maintenance plan will be. It's really kind of often ad hoc and shoestringish.
But it sounds as though the town is involved in issues of maintenance as they come up, repairing the roof or things like that.
They have oversight, yeah. So there's a pretty good chain of communication between myself, the library board of trustees, the trustees chair, and the select board. Yes.
Excellent. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Great, thank you. Are there any final questions? We have about a minute left. Or anything else that you'd like to tell us, Peter?
Well, let's see. You know, we're also in a town that, although we are relatively small and not close to a major municipality, you know, we're off Route 91 by 6 to 10 miles. So it feels a little bit quiet, but we do have one hotel and a ski area that the town has kind of taken back after bankruptcy. It's run through a nonprofit. So a lot of us foresee that the village here will become more of we'll need a sort of creative economy, more than what we have, I think. And the library is bound to be an essential part of that. And my goal has to bring in more hands, more help, more paid staff, so that we're not relying on volunteers. During the pandemic, I think we had help, but I think everyone was afraid. And my concern for Vermont libraries in general is that we perhaps rely on volunteers a little bit too much. That includes volunteer librarians in a sense, a lot of part-time facilities. And I think we're going to have to grow, whether that means physical space or in what we provide. And it can't all come down to a small staff. And I'll leave it with that. And I thank you for having this session.
Absolutely. Thank you for being here and providing your experience and representing your library. And if you have any thoughts or comments that you think of later on this topic or the prior two topics, please feel free to submit additional written testimony. We appreciate your time today. Thank you, Peter.
Thanks so much.
You're welcome. Just want to check to be sure. We don't see Bridget Carbonetti here, but she may be. Just want to, before we move to a different presenter. I do see that Carrie Watson is here. Carrie, your time was to be a little bit later this afternoon, but are you able to attend at this point and do your testimony at this point? Are you open to that?
I could. Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, then welcome. And thank you so much for being here, being with us. And we look forward to hearing what you have to say. You'll have 15 minutes to share and to answer questions from the working group.
Okay, well, great. Thank you, Catherine, and welcome. I think I'm going to follow Peter's lead and be more conversational. I don't have too many things prepared. I'm at the Varnum Memorial Library, which is in Jeffersonville. I've been there for about 7 months. So just a little background. Jeffersonville is a village within Cambridge. So when the population that we predominantly serve is the town of Cambridge, the village of Cambridge, and the village of Jeffersonville. When the Varnum Memorial Library was built in 1938, the U.S. Census had the population of the village of Cambridge, the village of Jeffersonville, and the town of Cambridge at about 1,300 per population. In 2000, the census had jumped up to 3,800. So we've almost tripled our population size since the library was built. Our library is beautiful. It's about 1,400 square feet. I'm not there right now, otherwise I'd give you a little tour. But the biggest issue that we have is that it's only 1,400 square feet. And trying to meet the growing community with their growing needs is a real challenge right now. We know that COVID has affected so many parts of all of our lives. What it's especially highlighted, I think, in our rural areas is the dire need for broadband. Not just regular Wi-Fi, but broadband so that people can do the kinds of things that they need to do to make their living, to stay connected, and just continue being in a community in a safe way. In Cambridge, there's only 2 public bathrooms. We're one of them. We're not really set up to be a public restroom, but we're not going to deny that service to anybody. So what that looks like is, especially in the summertime when we have bike tours coming through, we'll have a line out the door of 12 or more people needing to use a restroom, and we're the one place that they can come to. We're not a municipal library. We are, I guess, what you would call a hybrid library. The Varnum is privately owned and operated by the Crescendo Club. So that's what a friends group would normally look like in a municipal library. We do get some funds from the town. This year at town meeting, we got a substantially larger amount of money than we have in the past couple of years. But our annual budget for this year is $118,000. We are serving not just Cambridge and Jeffersonville, but we're serving the people in Waterville, people in Belvedere, and people in Fletcher as well. Belvedere and Fletcher don't have their own libraries, and Waterville has a very small library that's run by volunteers. And so a lot of people who need to use the internet come to our place. Really, computers, technology, and spaces for people to gather are what I see as the most crucial needs right now. There's really no space indoors for any community groups to gather safely or with regularity. And at least in my vision, that's what a library is for. It's not just about the books, right? So meeting the community and meeting their needs is challenging with our space constraints. I'm happy to answer any and all questions. I might not have as much information as people who have been in their positions longer, but I'm here for you. So.
Thank you, Carrie, for coming today and for providing us with this testimony. You may have shared this already, but I think I missed it. How long have you been at the Varnum Library?
About 7 months.
Oh, okay. So you're just. And had you worked in libraries previously?
I have. I come from Kentucky, so another rural state, and had quite a few years of experience working in 2 different towns in Kentucky in the same library system, 2 different branches.
I'm curious if there's anything that you saw happening at the local or county level or state level in Kentucky that you think would be beneficial for us to look into here in Vermont. Anything that supported you in the rural library environment you worked in there that you think would be that you haven't really noticed us doing here and that you might not know about, and that you think would be worth checking with them. And I think you may have seen Tom McMurdo is from Kentucky and he's shouting out Kentucky right now.
Oh no, I
sure everybody knows there's a Kentucky moment happening.
Right.
Go
No,
Cats.
that's awesome. I honestly didn't know that there was anything but municipal libraries before I moved here. So I'm used to seeing a lot more support financially, certainly from the cities that have their libraries. I kind of feel like municipal libraries might have an easier go at meeting the specific needs of communities. Certainly, they have a larger resource pool in that support. I guess the main thing that I see from my past experiences and from my current experiences is the absolute crucial need for community support and social support, and how the library can fulfill those 2 needs. People need workspaces, and people need to have an access point for the myriad of social services that people need. And that's what libraries can do. We don't have a Boys and Girls Club. We don't have a YMCA. There's so many supports that you see in larger communities, and we have a library. So how can we meet those needs with what we have? Again, to me, it comes down to space. I just had somebody from the Department of Labor come into the library today and ask me if they could start holding job coaching sessions for the people of Cambridge at our branch. And of course, yes. But in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, oh my God, where are we going to fit this? How are we going to do this safely with COVID? We have literally 2 rooms that are available to the public, and that houses all of our collection. And we have 2 tables. So, but we have to. That's what we're here for. So I'm not sure, Catherine, if that answered your question.
I think it did. Are there other questions from other members of the working group? Maybe I'll just ask a follow-up. Is there anything from, I can hear from what you've shared that there's a different dynamic when you're not a municipal library, but you serve the community, or you serve a number of communities that are in the area. I'm wondering, is there anything that you could imagine that you might need from us at the state library, or that you might need help with at a state level, that would support you and the communities you serve in the work you're doing and in the services to those communities?
It's a great question, Catherine. I don't really think that I can responsibly answer that question since I'm so new. Again, the majority of my experience is with municipal libraries, so I'm kind of more comfortable working within that framework, and I can see a lot of benefit to smaller, privately owned or volunteer owned and operated libraries, maybe having a clearer path to turning into a municipal library if that's what they choose to do. But again, I may be speaking out of turn, so.
I appreciate that. And if something comes to you, please don't hesitate to let us know at the state library, either through providing additional written testimony or just letting us know of the service you need. And if there's something that you're wondering if we provide, since you're so new here, like me, please just reach out to us and we may be able to help with that. Are there any other questions for Carrie from our working group members? Okay, well, in that case, thank you so much for being here today and for participating in this process, especially that you are new to your role into the area. It's really great that you took that step to share with us about your experiences and to be here with us today. So thank you for that. We really appreciate it. Okay, now I think our next, I want to just check if Bridget Carbonetti was able to be here. Has Bridget shown up?
I haven't seen her.
You haven't
I don't,
seen
at least that I'm aware of, at least.
Okay, well, that's all right. And then we did hear that Linda from Weston Library, and I'm avoiding her last name so I don't mispronounce it, that Linda was not able to be here. So we had those two folks who weren't able to be here. So at this point, we can move into our public comment. So this would be a time that members of the public who are here, who were not on the agenda, could speak to the topic of facilities. I'm wondering if we have anyone here with us today who would like to provide public comment. It feels sort of intimidating maybe because everybody's cameras are up. So maybe we'll just turn our cameras back on, members of the working group, and then if there is somebody here, they'll feel welcomed by our friendly faces. I'm not sure if there is anyone who would like to share. I just want to be sure that we give folks that opportunity if they would like it, that they feel welcomed. There is somebody here I don't think we've heard from. Bryn Geffert.
I think that was somebody who was invited to the call. It's a sort of Teams holdover, I think.
Okay.
So I don't think they're actually present, I believe.
And then I want to just check in with our members of the working group. Are there any of you who would like to share, who didn't present earlier, or who would like to share on anything? If you're, for example, if you didn't participate earlier as in part of one of these presentations, but you wanted to share from your personal experience at your home library or talk about something you've seen in libraries. Jeanette?
Hi. It's a situation in Rochester, and I understand it's not all that unusual. that the library building was actually deeded to the trustees. The trustees are 5 elected members at town meeting. We are a municipal library, but the town uses the fact that the deed is actually to the trustees to dodge responsibility to maintain the building as a town building. And I didn't know how many other libraries that might be in this group today or experience there from folks at the Department of Libraries on, how to address these issues that are constantly raised about whose responsibility the facilities are, either as an actual town building or as, in the case of ours, a deed that has been questioned over the years.
It's an interesting question. I see Meg's got her hand up. Meg, did you have something in response to this, or did you have a different?
No, I had a different question. Thanks.
Yeah. So I guess I'm just throwing it out there for consideration that not all building ownership in municipal libraries or even in incorporated libraries are cut and clear. I know there are municipal libraries that are housed in non-municipal buildings. There are incorporated libraries housed in municipal buildings that, with all the libraries around the state, the questions of ownership, the questions when applying for grant funding, because some exclude municipal buildings and are only for nonprofit owned buildings, that, there's a lot of pieces rolling around to get straight when applying for grants, as well as for getting funding from your municipality to take care of the municipal building.
I saw Tom McMurdo, who's attending this meeting and has a lot of information stored in there about our libraries pop on screen. So let's just check with Tom. Did you have anything you could share in response to this?
Well, my point felt salient for a moment, and then I realized it was a little vague. But Jeanette, to your question, I have, in different conversations with librarians over the years, I think that there is always this kind of a struggle to get, there can be a struggle for library directors to get what they need. And I think that there are ways that towns and other organizations sometimes can defer that. And I think one of the things that we all know is that that question always comes up when you're talking about the library. Your funds are going up against the police, the fire department, the other responsibilities of the town. So I think in that context that I have heard that sometimes there are different strategies that folks use to try to put things off. But I'm sure that those of you who are working as library directors have your own local environment and understand that those struggles much more intimately than I think that I could comment on. So with that, I'll just leave it. Thank you.
And I'm actually pinging Josh, who is helping us run the meeting, but who also is sort of our survey guru here at the Department of Libraries, to check with him on whether we collect any information like this in our surveys as far as who's responsible. We collect tons of information: how many reader seats, how many computers, square footage, population served. Is there anything about who's responsible for maintenance?
Not really, no. The report, and this is actually a sort of related question is coming, we've sort of been talking about this year. There's not a lot of info in the way the report is set up on its own about some of the intricacies of who's paying for what in the building. It's just sort of, there's just one number, one spot where you put other expenses, which is the building and a whole bunch of other stuff. So we're thinking we're going to expand that maybe a little bit next time around to try to get that, but it still might not get at exactly what we're looking at here. So we might need either a different survey or more questions. But the short version is we don't have a great answer on that right now.
Well, at least we know what we don't know. That's a starting point, right?
Absolutely.
We're narrowing down on it. Meg has been waiting patiently with a different question, or comment, or something to share perhaps, because I had asked folks if they hadn't shared.
Yeah, something. Thanks. Thanks, Catherine. And again, my apologies. For some reason, Teams won't let me unclick my video. I just wanted to, I want to read Karen McCullough's comment in the chat. I know she's lost her voice, and we're representing Vermont school libraries. And she writes, for school libraries, many folks find that they don't have enough space, but they are also at the mercy of the school district for their space. They can't pursue grant funding without district support. And libraries, library space and funding are often lower on the priority list for districts. And I would confirm that, concur with that statement from Karen. I also just want to draw attention to the school librarian's testimony that has been submitted, written testimony. We have written testimony from school librarians Amy Young at Berlin Elementary School, Bridget Carbonetti from the Irisburg Village Schools, Jill Abear, who is my colleague at U32 Berlin High School, and she writes about handicapped accessibility access that we've been advocating for at the U32 library that we have yet to see put into place. Oh, Joe Bertinelli from Timoth Elementary School, Peter Langella from Champlain Union High School. I would direct folks to Peter's testimony as well. He writes, I hadn't heard of this concept of school libraries as offering spaces of a campfire, a watering hole, and a cave. Great metaphor to think about how to design our facilities. So I just wanted to advocate again for the school library testimony. We find that we don't often get their time here in the open meetings, but there is a lot of good written testimony in the folder. Thank you.
Thank you, Meg. Did you want to share any testimony yourself? Or
only that, in my experience in both Moortown Elementary School Library for 8 years and now U32 for 7, the renovations in both of those spaces had occurred 25 and 20 years ago. So it seems on the outset that we are recently renovated new libraries, but in the past 25 years, we've seen the internet really become a big part of our learning spaces. And so our spaces really are outdated in terms of how to meet learners' needs, their transferable skills. Our libraries pivot to creating opportunities for students to create, make, and learn, not just, come in and do quiet research. So our libraries are often the hubs of our school facilities. And like Karen said, we're often limited by local budgets in terms of the sort of changes that we can make. So I would recommend some sort of, when this committee makes recommendations, that there are sort of like educational quality standards that would apply to school libraries. So that if we get something in writing that would be a base minimum for all school libraries, that might impel or compel local districts to invest in their local school libraries.
that was an important comment, so I'm still scribbling my notes about it. Thank you for providing testimony. All right, is there anybody else? Oh, Susan's got her hand up. Susan, did you want to?
Yeah, I'd love to add some testimony, actually. I didn't think that I had anything to say on this topic because our library is very lucky in that we have a fairly modern building, and just in the last year we put a small extension on the building as well. And that was something that we've been talking about as a wish for thing sometime in the future for several years. And we had a family approach us, not really thinking about something as large as a building extension, but as a memorial for a family member. In discussions, what they decided they really wanted to do was build the extension of our dreams. So in many ways, we're in wonderful shape where we are. But this idea, as I've been hearing everyone else talk, this idea about the difference between the need for expansions, the need for like things that are breaking down and falling apart, or more space, and that concept of just long-term, low-level maintenance, I think is a really important one. And that's certainly something, as an incorporated library, our library has, for the 20 years that we've been in the building that we are in, every year as we build the budget, we think about the things that we need to do, and then we decide what we can cut from it. And it's always maintenance. So as we go through things, a 20-year-old building hasn't had too many issues, but it's something that's always getting pushed off to the side. So that concept of having someone who has that expertise that could come in and talk to us and guide us, but also be that professional voice for our board members, I think would be a really valuable piece. I'm really enamored with this idea, because I can say, but the clapboards are rotting. We really need to do something. And they hear me talking all the time. But if somebody whose job it is to tell us what's needed says that to the board, it carries a different level of weight. If they're male, it might carry even more weight, but that's a different issue. So I just wanted to bring that up again as something that's, that were something that we could find a way to make happen on a state level, I think that could provide a really huge value to libraries, probably all libraries, but certainly incorporated libraries that don't necessarily have the same level of support from the towns that they're working in. So that's all I had to say.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Appreciate your sharing. Okay. Is there anyone else who wanted to provide public comment? If not, I would like to move into our, before we move into that, I was going to just read the names of everybody whose testimony we had received as of this morning. And some of these were just mentioned by Meg, I believe, but I just wanted to formally just read them so that you know to look out for these. We'll be posting all of these to the website. So Jill Aber from U32, Maureen Badger from Daly Memorial Library in Derby, Cheryl Doubleday from Bradford Elementary School, Catherine Goldsmith from Starksboro Public Library, Peter Langella from CVU High School, and Randall Smathers from Rutland Free Library. So we will get those posted shortly on our working group webpage, and then if we receive any others, we will add them as we receive them so that we have a full grouping of them. The next thing on our agenda today is really is actually supposed to happen at 3:45. I'd like to recommend that we begin it now so that we can conceivably have longer to talk about some of it. Since at the beginning of the meeting, we're talking about process and how we need to establish a process. So I would like to welcome everybody who was able to turn their camera on. If you're a member of the working group, if you could turn your cameras on, that would be great. If your cameras are already on though, raise your hand because maybe I'm just not seeing on cameras. Oh, here you go. All right, so I think my cameras are working for the most part. That's good. Great. So one of the things that we need to do is to set up the date for our next meeting of this type, which is on the topic of technology, and it's tentatively scheduled for sometime in May. I'd like to recommend narrowing that down a little bit. Two dates I can suggest are May 20th or May 27th. They're both Fridays. I'm not here probably for the first 2 Mays, which is the first 2 Fridays, which is why I've recommended these last 2.
Now, which one of those Fridays is bumping up against Memorial Day weekend?
That is a great question.
The
The
27th.
27th.
Well, we probably should avoid that one.
Okay.
I would not be available on the 20th. That doesn't mean it can't happen. I can always watch the video later.
Well, we could just do a simple show of hands for the 20th and then a show of hands for the 27th. So can you use your, I'll kick it off by raising my little hand icon for, you can vote on both, by the way. It's fine to vote for both. I'm going to start with a vote for the 20th among those folks who are members of the working group. It's really weird. Everything keeps rearranging in front of me, so I shouldn't look at it yet, or I might need Dramamine. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 of us think that the 20th is a good day. Okay, if your hand is up now, lower your hand. And now we're going to vote on the 27th, which is adjacent to Memorial Day, but which may be a fine day for people. Everybody getting 8? Okay. Well, based on our ability to attend, it looks like the better date for our group is the 27th. Do we envision that this may be impactful as far as whose testimony we can solicit? If some people might be away.
As far as school librarians, it shouldn't impact. I know in my district, we can't use, like we can't add, that's a 3-day weekend and we can't take the Friday off prior without penalty. Like we can't add a personal day on to make a 4-day weekend because I've tried that before. So it shouldn't impact public school librarians too much.
So Maria and Meg, you've got hands raised still. Is that for comments on this or?
It wasn't from me, but I do have a slight comment. Knowing my university, I have no idea how this would impact other universities, but knowing my university and my departments, it may impact testimony from academic libraries, but we've also been struggling to get that anyway, so.
I kind of would concur with Maria. I might change my mind and say on the 27th, we definitely see a trend of people like getting out of work as soon as like the bell rings. So, you know, in terms of like later afternoon testimony, that might have an impact on that.
Jeanette?
Well, if you're counting and it's close, I need to change mine. I forgot I have a graduation to start driving cross country for that weekend.
Okay, so we're taking one away. So now we're like 6 and 7. So maybe we should just go with, I'm kind of feeling the tone is maybe we should just go with the 20th because then we don't have, it'll be easier to get the people to testify, the participants. Does that sound reasonable? Okay,
I
May
think
20th.
probably right.
May 20th it is, and then do we want to do the same meeting structure where it's one meeting split into two-hour sessions?
Yes, please.
Okay,
Mhm.
and keep the 2-hour pause in the middle.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll do the same structure. While we're talking about structure, as the state's reopening, I want to just check with the group on how we would like to proceed as far as do we want to do in-person meetings, continue this type of meeting, or offer some sort of a hybrid solution?
I would rather not do an in-person meeting, mainly because I would be traveling from the very south of the state, which would make the day very long.
Karen is weighing in via chat. And Karen, thank you so much for being here today when you're not feeling well, and for participating via chat. So we'll just make sure, we have to make sure we read everything that Karen says out loud, so it's part of our record. Karen is saying, please keep them virtual. So I'm hearing a strong desire for, and I'm seeing some head nods, people would like to maintain this virtual approach for us. One thing that we've done in the past for our Vermont Board of Libraries meetings is that we do offer a space here in Barrie at our building. We set up a space so that somebody who doesn't have access to technology could come in and sit and give testimony or observe the meeting. Would you like us to add that component for our May meeting? So if there were somebody who needed that?
I think that would give an opportunity for more people to actually participate.
I'm seeing some head nods. Does everybody feel like that's worth trying it out and seeing how it goes? Okay, Kelly?
I just had a question about
Kelly, we just lost your audio, or at least I did.
how's that?
That's better.
Okay, sorry. I was just wondering, as far as setup, would anyone be interested if we moved the meeting like an hour earlier? So we did it like 9 to 11, had a 2-hour break, and then we're done by 3. Would that be more convenient, like for school librarians?
I mean, either one. I mean, definitely our days typically end at 3. I noticed like school librarians tend to get on a little earlier. It doesn't really matter. I'm an early bird, so I can't argue with starting at 9.
Okay, let's do a show of hands in the hand function. Try to get to the right view to count your hands. So people who would like to move it to 9 o'clock to, would be 9 to 11, a pause, and then resume the meeting 1 to 3. I'm ambivalent. Let's try it out. Maybe we'll get more participation. I'm just going to quickly look to make sure that the Vermont Libraries people aren't telling me there's some sort of huge administrative burden on them. Nobody's freaking out in my chat thread, so I think it's okay. I think 9 o'clock we can handle that. We get here at 7:45, so for us, like 10 o'clock is lunchtime. Meg?
No, I was just voting. I'll lower my hand.
Okay.
Thanks, Jeff.
Of course. I'm still trying to manage. I think the one person for whom it's easier to be in person is probably me, because it's like so many elements going on here. Okay, so the May meeting will take place on the 20th. It will kick off at 9 a.m. We'll have the first session, the first half for 2 hours. We'll take a 2-hour pause, and then we'll have the second half of the meeting from 1 to 3 p.m. And we will also set up in person here at the Vermont Department of Libraries so that somebody who doesn't have access to the computer might be able to come and participate that way in either observing or giving testimony if they needed to, if they would like to. Okay, the other meeting that we have going on in the summertime is the July meeting on staff. I understand usually we've been setting meetings up one at a time, but it might be helpful to people in planning their summer because I know how busy public libraries are in summer, and I know even school libraries by July, you may even be busy, and academic, you're probably always busy, and then people may have travel plans and things like that. So do we want to set the date of the July meeting today too, so that we can get it on the calendar? So I don't think we probably want to have it right next to the holiday, Independence Day holiday. So the possible dates in July look like the 15th, the 22nd, and the 29th. I think the 8th would be potentially okay as well. It's sort of far from the 4th, but that first week, I know some people are just. We seem to be heading toward the second half of the month usually.
I don't have any Friday meetings that month yet, so I'm open.
Okay, well, do you want to, what do you think of the 22nd? Because that's kind of spaced nicely after the, if we keep to this time frame-ish each month.
Sounds good.
Okay, show of hands for everybody who's okay with the 22nd.
Karen just mentioned she cannot do the 22nd, but could do the 15th or the 29th.
Oh, okay, hang on. Let's see. Because all the rest of us seem pretty ambivalent, right? So let's just do a straight vote like we did for the past month. So everybody put your hands down. And then, okay, we'll start with the 15th. Who's available on the 15th? Again, you can vote on every single one if you'd like. It's just really a show of availability. So it looks like there's 6 for the 15th. And then the 22nd, if let's put our hands down. We'll put them up again. Okay, so we're voting now on the, we're not voting, we're just showing availability on the 22nd. So that one has 7. And now we're going to show availability on the 29th. I must have missed somebody voting. I got 15 on the 6 on the 15th, 7 on the 22nd, and 7 on the 29th. So I just made the mistake of looking at the chat thread to see if there was something happening there, and there are tons. So what do you all think? 22nd or 29th? I don't want to be deciding.
29th.
29th. Let's go with the 29th. Okay. For now, let's leave the time ambiguous, and we'll see how the 9 to 11 works out. Does that sound okay? We'll just give people the date, and then we can loop back and figure out which time works better for everyone in the end. And that one's on the topic of staff. Okay, great. So there was a question at the beginning, at the very beginning this morning, when we were all fresh and caffeinated and wide-eyed. And I'm trying to remember who said it. It was such a salient point that we needed to talk about our process. And I listened to the last, or I watched the last session, and I heard the conversation at the beginning and at the end about, hey, what's up with our process? And I've been reading a lot about the open meeting laws, and I know that there are more things that I need to know on that topic, and so I have reached out to get some questions answered. We work with the Attorney General's office, and they can really be super helpful in answering all of my many, many questions. And if we have questions collectively, I can also bring those questions to that meeting to get some advice on it. But my sense from looking at that open meeting law document was that if we do editing over time of a document, it could be construed as a meeting, that might rise to the level of a meeting. And also that if we do emailing of a whole group, that could rise to the level of a meeting. We could do editing of a document in an open session. That's one way we could share working on a document. We could also potentially break into small groups that don't reach a quorum, and maybe somebody's from our body, along with administrative support from Department of Library staff, could review the video on a topic and kind of get the salient information, and then the gaps, identify gaps, things we need to look into more, and then come back and report to us at a meeting about that. I need to get more information on how exactly that could work and be in compliance with the open meeting laws. But the portions about group emails and collective editing of online documents are on page 10 of that document that we mentioned in the chat thread this morning. Kelly?
Darn it, you think I'd have this down by now. In ARSL, what we do a lot of, and maybe we're in violation, is we have a Google Doc, and people go in and make their comments, and then when we meet, we go through and we discuss those comments, but people can see what's there and, you know, kind of see what other people are thinking, so everyone isn't making the same comment. But it tends to work out fairly well for governance when we're going over policies and such like that. So I don't know if that would work.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Let me read to you from this. This is what made me nervous. We recommend that a quorum of a public body should not participate in collectively editing a document outside of a duly warned public meeting. unless the body is in deliberative session as part of a quasi-judicial proceeding. That made me feel like we're not in that quasi-judicial proceeding, and their recommendation is not to participate in collectively editing with a quorum. That was why I thought fewer than a quorum could work on documents potentially, on portions of things, on sections that are discrete.
Well, I understand what you're saying and I understand your concern, but actually it's just one person working on the document at a time, probably. But I see the difference. It's just they're asking us to do a Herculean task in very little time, and now they're telling us that we can't. You can't do it in face to face.
Well, there are a couple. I think that when you look at the way that this is written, the context of it, even though it's over time, even though it's evolving, the guidance seems consistent that it's like a gigantic long meeting, kind of like how our meeting is in different pieces today. That when you're all considering the ideas in that way. Now, I'm not an attorney and I do want to get counsel on this so that the Department of Libraries isn't guiding us all astray. But the guidance in here does talk about, even if it's one person at a time doing it, and this is considered also in the group use of group emails. Wendy?
Yeah, I have had experience of a collective editing of a document. And the thing that becomes really difficult is the initial setting up of that document. It is a lot easier if there's something there to edit rather than it being a blank sheet of paper.
Mm-hmm. Yes, so I think a framework or the bones would be helpful. I want to just share the sentence I'm looking at, because you're probably not looking at this document right now. That is giving me the heebie-jeebies with the collective editing. It says collective editing, even if performed by members individually and over time, may well fall within the bounds of a meeting under, and then it has the statute, when the exchange of ideas and opinions occurs outside the public view. It goes on to then say, even if you made the document public, everybody doesn't have equal ability to attend the document or use the document or know how the document functions like they would in an open meeting that we're hosting. So I think we need to get a little bit of clarity on what type of structure could work. And I do think one of the things that's provided for in the statute that establishes us is for the Department of Library staff to provide administrative support. So what I would like to do is to get some guidance about what we can do, make sure I'm interpreting this correctly, because it's a pretty thick document and it's a pretty complex thing for us to understand, and then potentially come back with a suggestion of how we might be able to structure this with support from our team and some of the subject matter experts among our consulting staff, working with specific members of our group who kind of volunteer to be on small work groups with discrete topic focus areas. Jeanette?
If in consideration about needing to be a warned public meeting to have a quorum discussing a topic and working on this, it would seem to me that if we restricted testimony to a smaller part of our meeting, and then at the end of the meeting, to deliberate between the working group as to what would go into a document from that day's testimony. So you're still within that meeting, it's still a public meeting, it's still a warned meeting, and you're You're not worrying about those issues. You're getting some ideas down, and then perhaps the administrative support there at the department could edit those together to come up with a draft.
That seems possible. So change the structure of the agenda without changing the structure of the meetings. Reserving a bigger chunk at the end for group work on the topic.
Correct.
Kelly?
I understand what you're saying, Jeanette, but I don't know if we want to deter people from testifying. And I don't know if people want to make the meeting any longer. I do agree that it would be good to get, you know, salient points together at the end of the meeting, but I don't know how we can put more into the allotted time without turning, you know, people who are trying to help away.
Thanks, Kelly. Susan?
I hesitate even to say this out loud, but do we know that we're bound by open meeting law? I think we should be following it as a general rule, but are we bound by it in every instance? I'm not sure that as a working group we are.
I will ask that specific question of our folks that we go to for legal advice. My impression is that yes, since it's convened, since we are called into being by the legislature and we're functioning under their auspices, that we would be bound by open meeting. That's my sense, but I'll certainly double check it. I haven't even single checked it yet. I'll check it. That's all I'll do. Timing wise, it's a little bit awkward because I haven't had the opportunity to get. I wanted to check in with you all before and meet you all and have some conversation about this today before I went, because, you know, just, and a question like yours, Susan, if we had questions from our group, I should roll them in with my questions. Thing I'm a little bit concerned about is then if we don't meet again until May, and if we can't make a decision without meeting, then it makes it a little bit challenging, because it will take a little time to get answers to the questions, and for us, based on those answers to the Department of Libraries, to potentially suggest anything.
But it's not constituted as a meeting if we're setting an agenda. So if it's changing the structure of the agenda, then that's not an open, that doesn't have to be an open meeting.
I think setting the items on the agenda is okay, but it would be tough to, if we were to say, I don't know.
I say you can decide for us.
Well, I was going to suggest something that you might just be like, no way, we're not going to do it, which is to convene for like an hour one day in a publicly noticed meeting in April, and I report back on what I find out, propose how we move forward, and then we're set up well for the next however many meetings.
But we're only allowed so many meetings. According to the legislature, we're only allowed.
That's true either. That's the other thing that I want to check, because I think that that's a question I'm hearing from the group a lot, and when I read it, I see that there's this the way in which we get to there are only 12 meetings has to do with the money. I don't think that there's a prohibition against us meeting without reimbursement for an hour.
Go for it.
It would be potentially volunteering that 1 hour of time, but if people felt comfortable with it and we had a quorum, we could make a decision. And if we didn't have a quorum at the meeting, we could, even if it's just a public meeting and the people who are interested in coming can talk about it, then we could make a decision at the beginning of the main meeting. Does that sound okay?
Yeah.
Like a 1 hour meeting in April to just try to get some process down, because I can tell we all want to know what our structure is so that we can, I know everybody wants to be valuable and contribute, and people probably have more time to work on it a little bit here and there than to sit down for 4 hours in a day. Can we pick a day for the April 1 hour meeting and a time?
Yes.
I appreciate you all so much. We are, like, I know you are as tired as me of being in the all-day Zoom meeting, and so thank you for being here, and thank you for working on this in support of our libraries. Let's not do it on April 15th, because that day, isn't that like tax day or something? Sounds stressful. I would say the 22nd or the 29th to give us as much time as we can to get some guidance.
Well, I will say I will be on vacation both of those days, but you know, don't let that stop anybody else.
Likewise, I won't be available on the 22nd. But if there's a bigger group that can meet, I'm comfortable with that.
Okay.
I prefer the 29th, but I can make the 22nd work.
Okay, let's do a vote on the 22nd and then a vote on the 29th. So we'll start the 22nd. Put your little hand icons up. I only see 3. Okay, put your hands down. And now we're going to put up our hands for the 29th. Oh, that's better. See, 5. 5 is good. Is that everybody's? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, okay. So we'll do the 29th, and then can somebody shout out a time that they think it would be a good time for us? Be selfish, just shout out a time and we'll see what people think.
10 o'clock.
How does 10 o'clock sound? Do you sound okay? Do you feel okay, folks? Okay, 10 to 11 a.m. All right, we're doing things. This is super. We used that extra time really effectively. I liked that. Even though it's sad that we didn't get to hear from a couple of our people, it's great that we had a little bit more than 15 minutes to try to get all of that administrative work in. Kelly.
Sorry, I forgot to put my hand down after voting.
Oh, I thought you had some big thing. I was ready. Okay, I think are there any other things you want to talk about now? Oh, I want to share 2 things that I learned. One is that something that would be okay to do, I think, and I'll get clarity on this, would be that one person is the holder of the document and people just pass revisions to them directly, and that person doesn't respond. They just collect the suggestions and comments and whatever, which are then shared at the next meeting. That's the type of thing that does seem okay as a process thing. So just think about that. And I can't remember what the second thing was. It's been a long day. The second thing was how great it was to meet you all. Thank you so much for coming here and for participating in this and for volunteering of your time in this way to help the condition of all of our libraries in Vermont and to really just support all of Vermont's libraries. I really appreciate you. And we can adjourn now. Thank you. We'll stop the tape. Thanks very much, everyone.
Thank you.